India in details.
How did Hindus from Bharat civilize the West? How did Hindu ideas civilize the Christian world? And how important was the role that Hindus played in the Arab world? Well, you can be a proud Christian, Jew, Muslim, atheist, or whoever you are. But in this video, today, you have a special opportunity to finally understand why it is said that we should be thankful and grateful to Hindus for their immense contribution to civilizing the West and for being the original source of the immense knowledge to the Muslim world. Yes, you heard that right. Hindus from Bharat civilized the ancestors of those who, until today, have been fooling themselves and others by spreading lies about the history of our world and hiding the history that we all deserve to know. Yes, the facts in this video are going to shake the hollow foundation of the shiny, cunningly crafted image of the West. Here it is very important to mention that for so long, the West has been successfully brainwashing and fooling its own people and the world through its education system and its soft power. But the good news is that there are people who may have been born in the West who are slowly but surely beginning to understand how twisted their own education system has been. For example, as observed by the historian William Dalrymple, in Britain, the education system still gives the impression that most of the great scientific advances of antiquity were the product of the brilliance of ancient Greece. Students learn about Pythagoras and Archimedes at primary school, but it is a shame that their twisted education system fails to teach them about the mathematicians of Indian background, whether it is Brahmagupta or Aryabhata. So why does the Western education system seem so scared to highlight Hindu brilliance to their own students? Well, the bitter reality is that the West is too insecure to accept the truth. As a result, what the West has been doing is trying to hide its own inferiority complex by creating an artificial, glorified image of itself for its own people and the world. Yes, I want to ask why, in my country, in our schools, are we not taught that in 628 AD, an Indian sage living on a mountain in Rajasthan made one of the world's most important mathematical discoveries? Yes, the great mathematician, Brahmagupta, the first mathematician to treat the circular zero symbol. Not only that, as observed by the historian William Dalrymple, he seems to have been the first to describe gravity as an attractive force a full millennium before Isaac Newton. Yes, you heard that right. Before Isaac Newton. I wonder why the Western education system is too insecure to teach us that. But before Brahmagupta was even born, there was another Indian genius, Aryabhata, whose work contains a very close approximation of the value of pi and deals in detail with spherical trigonometry. And read this. Aryabhata's work allowed him to calculate the movements of the planet, eclipses, the size of the Earth and, astonishingly, the exact length of the solar year to an accuracy of 7 decimal places. Not only that, he also correctly proposed a spherical Earth that rotated on its own axis. I want to ask this again. Why is the Western education system scared to share all this with us? And read this. As correctly understood by the historian William Dalrymple, it was the mathematical learning of ancient India that traveled first to the Arab world, then far to the West. Hindu ideas shaping the foundation of the Christian and the Arab world. That is the history of our world that we deserve to know. But wait. Don't go anywhere, because in today's video I will share more about the contributions of Hindus that they have hidden from us. But before that, I want to ask several questions to the custodians of our twisted European or Western education systems. How dare you create fake Western heroes to make us feel good about ourselves and deny us the chance to learn about the real Indian heroes who single-handedly shaped the world we live in? Have you kept us in the dark because the Christianity-centered Western civilization was too scared to reveal the true intellect and brilliance of the Dharmic civilization? Is it because an Indian genius whose work has shaped the history of our world acknowledges a non-Christian God in his writings? Or is it because the Western education system is too afraid to teach their Christian students about the mathematician from Bharat who writes, "By the grace of Brahma"? After all, when an Indian genius whose work has shaped the history of our world acknowledges a non-Christian god, Brahma, in his writings, it can bring a lot of insecurity and fear to the Eurocentric ecosystem and to the Western countries whose socio-political landscape still revolves around Christian supremacy that invalidates all other paths. I want to ask the Western colonial criminal states, are you too scared to talk about Brahma to your Christian students, or do you just feel too inferior to teach the brilliance of Hindu mathematicians? So, my dear Europeans and others who live in the Western world, if you truly care to learn about the truth, read this carefully. As observed here, it was the man from Bharat who perfected the numeral system in use around the world, arguably the nearest thing the human race has to a universal language. Yet, in the West, we attribute our numerals to the Arabs, from whom we borrowed them, not the Indians who actually invented them. Like ancient Greece, ancient India came up with a set of profound answers to the big questions about what the world is, how it operates, why we are here, and how we should live our lives. Again and again, Indian intellect and wisdom traveled and spread around the world, not by conquest, but by its sheer cultural allure and sophistication. Yes, much of this dissemination was peaceful. There was a mass transfer of Indian soft power in religion, art, music, dance, technology, astronomy, mathematics, medicine, language, and literature. Out of India came not just pioneering merchants, astronomers and astrologers, scientists and mathematicians, doctors and sculptors, but also the holy men, monks, and missionaries of several distinct strands of Indic religious thought and devotion, Hindu and Buddhist. Not only that, more than half the world's population today lives in areas where Indian ideas of religion and culture are, or once were, dominant, and where Indian gods rule the imaginations of men and women. And let's not forget that it was Bharat that was the leading trading partner of Rome. Historian William Dalrymple tries to explain why it is that India's transformative effect is not better and more widely known. According to him, this is surely a lingering legacy of colonialism and, more specifically, Victorian Indology, which undermined, misrepresented, and devalued Indian history, culture, science, and knowledge from the period when Thomas Macaulay confidently proclaimed that a single shelf of a good European library was worth the whole native literature of India and Arabia. Yes, viewers. Don't you understand this? If India were acknowledged to already have been a powerful, cosmopolitan, and profoundly sophisticated civilization, then what justification would there be for Victorian Britain's civilizing mission? After all, how would you set out to bring civilization to a part of the world that you recognized has been supremely civilized for thousands of years and which indeed was spreading its influence all over Asia long before the coming of Christianity? So, viewers, now do you understand why they needed to create their own fake Western heroes to overcome their own deep-rooted inferiority complex? Never forget that the numerals invented in India were adopted by the Arabs by the 8th century, thanks to a dynasty of viziers of Baghdad, the Barmakids, who were Sanskrit-literate converts from Buddhism, some of whose members had studied Indian mathematics in Kashmir. Never forget that it was the Barmakids who sent missions to India in search of Indian scientific texts, resulting in a mission from Sindh that brought a compilation of the works of Brahmagupta and Aryabhata to Baghdad in 773. Historian William Dalrymple explains that a generation later, all the Sanskrit mathematical texts stored in the House of Wisdom library in Baghdad were brilliantly summarized by the Persian polymath Khwarizmi, whose name is the origin of our word algorithm, and whose book, popularly known as Kitab al-Jabr, is the basis of our word algebra. It became the basis for mathematics across the Arab world, but it is the original name of the book that points to its inspiration. The compendious book on calculating completion and balancing according to Hindu calculation. From Baghdad, these ideas spread across the Islamic world. 500 years later, in 1202, Leonardo of Pisa, known by his nickname Fibonacci, returned from Algeria to Italy with his father, where he found his compatriots still shackled by the Latin numeral system. Fibonacci had grown up in a Pisan trading post in Béjaia, where he had learned fluent Arabic as well as Arab mathematics. On his return, at the age of 32, he wrote the Liber Abaci, the Book of Calculation. As he explained in the introduction, it was in Algeria that I was introduced to a wonderful kind of teaching that used the 9 figures of the Indias. It was Fibonacci's Liber Abaci, seeding the growth of banking and accounting, initially in Italy under dynasties such as the Medici and then in the rest of Europe. These innovations helped propel the commercial and banking revolution that financed the Renaissance, and in time, as these ideas spread, the rise of Europe, ultimately making it look east towards the riches of India, the source of all these ideas. Yes, India had a much larger footprint in the world than even Indians realize, and India is the base of so much of Asian, but also world civilization. But despite all this, the Western colonial criminal states are going to do what it takes to maintain their fake, shiny image. The reason behind this seems quite obvious. They want their people to remain quiet. They don't want to be questioned. They don't want their crimes to be exposed. They are afraid of that, because if their own people, at a mass scale, start questioning the Western regimes or governments and start holding them accountable for the worst crimes against humanity that have been committed by the West's socio-political and religious institutions may just fall apart. That is why they have a big interest in brainwashing us and even their own people. Through direct or indirect influence or through neo-colonialism, they want to silence or brainwash the citizens of their former colonies. Because it is the citizens of the former colonies who are likely to be more motivated to expose the crimes of the West. That is why they even use brown sahibs or traitors to strengthen their nefarious designs and agenda in the former colonies, to keep the citizens of the former colonies brainwashed, emotionally colonized, and thus less likely to ask tough questions that can collapse the fake, shiny image of the West and uncover its worst crimes at a mass scale. But citizens of the former colonies need to be awakened. They need to be emotionally decolonized. Only then can justice be served on a global scale. But the task is not easy. How can Indians question the education system of the West when their own education system, in many ways, continues to serve the neo-colonial agenda of the Western colonial criminal states and presents a twisted, colonialism-inspired, Eurocentric worldview? Indians first need to decolonize their own education system. The task could be challenging, but this challenge is expected in a country that was a former colony for hundreds of years. According to Michael Danino, who was a member of the Indian Council of Historical Research in India, keeping the accomplishments of the Indian civilization out of the view of students would be a wrong ideology. Let us never forget that for 1,000 years, India's ideas spread along the Golden Road and transformed the world, creating around itself an Indosphere, a cultural zone that spread over political borders by the sheer power of its ideas. Within this area, Indian culture and civilization transformed everything they touched. As I mentioned earlier, India had a much larger footprint in the world than even Indians realize, and India is the base of so much of Asian but also world civilization. Yes, Hindu wisdom, and the base of world civilization. How long can we run away from or deny that truth? See you again.